I took piano lessons when I was a girl, uh, mostly because my mother thought that would be a really good idea. And then I quit when I was 14, and she said, "You're going to regret this someday." And of course, I did regret it years later, thus proving that our mothers are almost always right. Uh, so one day, when I was finishing work on A Fierce Radiance, I received in the mail an announcement for a class about the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And this was a class being sponsored by my college, Swarthmore. It was really, I think, an offshoot of the development office to say we can get alums involved with the school by offering them classes in things that they would love and that taught by Swarthmore professors. And so they had a program that brought Swarthmore professors to New York and other cities to teach classes. And that program continues to this day, though it's on Zoom now, uh, since the pandemic. So I received this announcement for the class about the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, and I had a very strong visceral feeling that I ought to sign up for that class, take the class, even though I didn't really know very much about Bach and didn't particularly care about the music of Bach to that moment. But I was so driven by this idea that I wrote out the check and sent it in that very day. And I started taking the class, and I met some wonderful fellow students there. And the professor was fantastic. And one day, as I was leaving the class, I suddenly had one of these moments of insight. And I thought, I ought to write a novel about a lost manuscript of music. Now, this was a time that the stories had become more and more common in the news about stolen works of art, about works of art that had been taken usually by Jews, taken rather by Nazis from Jews during World War II, and then sold to other people or put into museums. And there was a movement of restitution to give these works of art back to the descendants, of the Jewish families that the works of art had been taken from. And so that was very much in my mind, the restitution of these works of art. But I thought, well, what if I found not a work of art, not a painting or a drawing, as not a work of visual art, but a masterpiece of music, a manuscript by Johann Sebastian Bach. And that's really where it took off from that moment. And I learned as much as I could about that era. And, I started working with that professor. Uh, he was advising me on how to develop the book. And I do, in the interest of full disclosure, have to say that years passed and that relationship developed, and he is now my husband. And, he went through every single fact in that book. And we're always pleased to say that no musicologists have ever found a musical mistake in that novel. So that makes him feel very good that he had done his homework. I hope the fictional part works as well, but that was the beginning of And After the Fire. The part about Henry Sachs, I wrote early one morning. I just woke up and I had this feeling of, a soldier is going to discover this manuscript at a house. I later decided to make the house in Weimar, but I didn't know that at that point. So it's an isolated house, and he's going to murder someone in the process while not meaning to murder anyone, and he'll find the manuscript. And I just wrote it right out. And it's hard to know where that inspiration came from. There's so much of the creative process that's a complete mystery.